I could start. I mean, I'm Rachel Levy Lesser,
it's being recorded.
and I got hooked up initially with Cantor Debbie and Seraphima and Julia and Congregation Shir Shalom of Westchester and Fairfield counties in the fall, because I did an event through the Jewish Book Council for my book that came out last year. And then after the event, I was talking to them and I was telling them about the baking that I do. So they invited me for this, but it also turns out that one of my really good friends from college, Kara, who lives in Westchester, her best friend from growing up is another Rachel who I know in Ridgefield, is a member of their synagogue. So Jewish geography.
Give a vote for Rachel's book. It's absolutely wonderful. I don't know, Bobby, if you were able to, maybe you weren't able to attend, but
No, I couldn't.
Accessories, and it is
What's it called?
Life's Accessories. And it was, I read it and I cried through half of it. I laughed through half of it. You felt like you were sitting down with a friend and they were telling you the story of their life through a scarf, a pin, a brooch, something through junior high, something in high school, growing up, something your mother gave you, your grandmother gave you. And it all just, wove together this wonderful life story. And I was very touched by it. And that's why I found her through the Jewish Book Council. And then I'm so thrilled. So if you're doing baking and cooking, well, what's not to like about that? We already love you, so I think we'll love your macaroons. And it turns out those macaroons are really good.
Right.
So they're really good. So
it's funny that you mentioned I love telling stories, that you mentioned the book, because I feel like the book is called Life's Accessories, and it's a collection of 14 essays that come together to tell a story. And in each essay, I use a different item from my jewelry box or my closet. And I find that every day I'm wearing something related to the book. And today I'm wearing these earrings, which are these like fun turquoise dangling earrings, which they're this brand Chan-Lu. And in the book, there's an essay called Chan-Lu and Growing Together. And it's about how I met my husband and we fell in love and we got married when we were young. I was only 25, but it was how we kind of grew up and grew together. And he gave me a pair of earrings, not these, but they were like them, and I lost them. And I felt terrible about it. And but I sort of came to realize, obviously the relationship is more important than the earrings. Yes, the book came out. We were married 20 years and he gave me a replacement pair of earrings. So he read the book.
That's what stories I have too about certain things.
Yeah.
I have a pair of earrings that I bought in Safad, in Israel, and they were Roman glass, they used. And I ended up losing, I wore them specifically on another trip when I went to Auschwitz. And when I got back on the bus, they were missing. Only one was missing. And I was hysterical crying. So I have a bunch of things that I could relate to. So I'm going to check out the book.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book. Wonderful book.
Okay. Now, Julie, can you mute, people can, let me just start the meeting, right?
Let her mute everybody.
Yes, should I mute everyone right now?
The people can unmute themselves, right? That's
okay, yeah.
Okay, they have a question. So I just want to welcome everybody to Congregation Shir Shalom. My name is Seraphim. I am the chair of our adult programming committee. And together with Cantor Debbie, we got to know Rachel Levy Lesser, who was one of our presenters back in February. And she read some chapters from her wonderful book called Life's Accessories. So after, Rachel already mentioned this, after the event, we spoke about other engagement that Rachel can do. And she said she's a good baker. And we invited her to show us how to bake Passover macaroons. But if Cantor want to add some more about Rachel, please go ahead.
Thank you, Seraphima. Rachel, we are so happy to invite you back to Congregation Shir Shalom. You did an amazing presentation of your book, Life's Accessories. And if anyone has not read it, I urge you to read it. It's really, really moving and just wonderful. So today, Rachel's here as not just the author of Life's Accessories, a memoir and fashion guide. Her work has appeared in the Huffington Post, Glamour magazine, Parenting magazine, Modern Law, Feller, and several anthologies. She is a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania and the University of Michigan Business School. In her previous life as a marketing professional, she worked on the business side of Time Inc. on magazines including In Style, People, and Real Simple. When not writing, Rachel can be found baking, and she hosts a baking show called A Mighty Blaze, where she interviews cookbook authors and bakes alongside with them. She practices yoga. I know she does Peloton because that's one of the ways she stays very thin with all her great baking and cooking. She likes to knit scarves, and she likes to wear them inside. And we're so happy you're here. And let me just say that I was very excited about this recipe, and I baked 2 batches this morning. I already gave away a half a batch. I'm freezing a half. I'm bringing another half to my son and his wife who just had a baby, and I'm hoping not to eat the other quarter. It's really, really good. I've had 2 today, so I think that should be enough. Take it away, Rachel.
Thank you, Seraphima and Cantor Debbie, for those great introductions.
Just
And-
one second. I just want to say that we specifically didn't put the exact instructions in the flyer, but you all will see how Rachel makes the macaroons, and then you will receive instructions.
Yes.
Okay.
And by the way, I put in the chat, because you were talking about my book and my work, my website, which is rachellevylesser.com. If anybody wants to check out the book or the work, feel free.
Right. And any questions people can put in the chat, and I'll relay them as we go along so we can let Rachel do her thing.
Yeah. And last housekeeping issue, I think everyone except for the hosts are on mute, just so we're not hearing everybody's mixers and egg cracking and everything going on. But like Cantor Debbie said, if you have a question, put it in the chat, and maybe when we're all done, we can unmute and talk about how delicious our treats are. So yeah, I'm really thrilled to be here. As Debbie and Seraphima said, I originally came to work with Shir Shalom a couple months ago when I did an event through the Jewish Book Council about my book. And afterwards we get to talking, as people do. And I started to tell them about a new baking initiative I'm doing, where I do a monthly baking show online where I interview cookbook authors and we bake some of their treats. We had the Magnolia Bakery woman on. We had a woman who started a bakery in Savannah, which is where my Aunt Jo is from, who's here. And by the way, as I look around all these boxes, there's a lot of people from Shir Shalom that I don't know. And I also feel like I'm at one of my family seders from like the 80s, because I have my Aunt Linda here on my dad's side, my dad who figured out the Zoom, which was amazing, and my Aunt Jo in Savannah, who is where in part where the recipe comes from. So now to talk about the recipe. Before we start the recipe, just so we're all ready to put our stuff in the oven, please preheat your oven to, I put mine on 350 because it's convection. I do it on 350 convection. If you're not using convection, you might want to do 375, but everybody's oven runs a little different. So, you know, we can see. My oven's already preset. So back to the recipe. The recipe comes from my Aunt Joanne, who I call Aunt Jo, who is my mother's sister. My mother passed away 17 years ago at a young age. And obviously that was a really tough time and tough thing to go through. But I was thinking about this today. I have the 2 best aunts in the world, my mom's sister and my dad's sister-in-law, who are both here, who I think have been to everything I've ever been to. This just reminded me when I was growing up, my mom used to say I had one aunt to dress me, which is my Aunt Jo, and one aunt to help me with my college essays, which is my Aunt Linda. And my Aunt Jo still dresses me, and my Aunt Linda still helps me with my writing, even though I'm 47 years old. So I feel very lucky in the aunts department. And that's just kind of a reminder. And I should say in the dad department too, because he kind of became a stepmother to me. So that was just kind of a life lesson. And like, obviously, you know, people lose people in their life, but you kind of have to keep your eyes open to what may be coming down the road, or you might miss it. And I feel really lucky that I have all these wonderful people in my life. So the recipe came from my Aunt Jo it came to me probably about 20 years ago. And the recipe initially came from my Aunt Jo's mother-in-law, who we called Edney. Her real name was Edna, but her grandchildren named her Edney. And she was a very tiny woman in stature. She definitely was not 5 feet tall. And I remember that when I was little, it was a big deal that I became taller than she when I was like little. But even though she was a small woman in stature, she was like a giant of a person. And I'm so happy that I have her recipe because I think of her when I bake it. So the recipe was originally in print in this book. It's actually a book put together for a fundraiser by Greenwood House, which is a Jewish nursing home nearby. This book came out probably 20 years ago. So I have the recipe in the book, but I also have a note card because I have my little notes on here about what I like to do and how I like to prepare it. For example, in Edney's recipe and Aunt Jo's recipe, I think they may say to melt the chocolate chips in a double boiler, but I don't do that. I just melt them in the microwave because who has time to deal with a double boiler? So the recipe was passed down to Edney, to Aunt Jo, to me. My mother never baked. She never cooked. That was not her strength. She had many other strengths. And just one quick funny story before we get baking. You guys are probably sick of my stories, but one of my favorite stories about these macaroons is for the last 20 years, my aunt has been baking them for everyone. I've been baking them for everyone. I'm glad to hear that Canner Debbie's giving them away because, you know, they're just wonderful. And it was over 20 years ago when I was dating my then boyfriend, who became my husband. I think we were just engaged, and my soon-to-be in-laws invited my parents to their house in Westchester County, New York, for a Seder. And it was like the meet the parents because nobody had ever met. And of course, my mom brought her sister's macaroons because she never baked. So my aunt gave her the macaroons. My parents, wonderful people. One of their strengths is not a sense of direction. They went to the wrong house. It was like around the corner, and they walked in and there was another Seder going on. And they thought they were in the right place. My mother handed the macaroons to the hostess because she didn't know who anybody was. And after a couple minutes, they realized they were in the wrong place. So my mother took her macaroons and left and went to the right house. So we always joke that these were the macaroons that went to the wrong Seder, but eventually made it to the right Seder. So that's my last story that I have for you. I hope everyone's ovens are preheated. The first thing that we're gonna do, I don't know if everybody's baking with us. I know some people are just watching, so you can just watch me, is we are going to beat 4 egg whites in an electric mixer. If you don't have an electric stand mixer, you can do it with a handheld, but you definitely need some electric mixers. So I'm gonna separate the egg whites right here. I hope you guys can still see me, yeah. So I'm gonna do that. And if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat box and they will ask me. So this is probably the hardest part, separating the egg whites, but that's it. So just 4 of them. I'm on number 2. Okay. As Canner Debbie pointed out, these are also really nice to make because there are no nuts in them. They're also gluten-free. You don't have to use any matzah meal. So they're pretty easy. That's number 3.
Let me just say they're dairy free. So if you care about parv, that's an amazing thing too.
That's true too. Yes, good point. Okay, so my 4 egg whites are in here. You're gonna be able to hear me because I've done this before. I'm just gonna get that going. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. So, you know, again, everybody's mixer is different. So mine is getting going. It takes a few minutes. You want the egg whites to be thick and stiff. So you will put a spatula. I have a spatula, you know, so that it'll come in, I call them waves, like stiff folds. And as you're doing that, so you're beating 4 eggs, to kind of get it stiff, you want to add a pinch of salt and a half a teaspoon of cream of tartar. So I'm going to go look at mine and see how they're doing. I did my pinch of salt, but I'm going to wait on the cream of tartar. While we're waiting for this to get to like a stiff mixture, you're going to take a 1.5 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips. I use semi-sweet. I mean, you could probably use whatever kind you have, but I'm going to use semi-sweet. And I'm going to put them in a bowl. Remember, I don't use a double boiler. I don't think I have a double boiler. So I'm putting them in the bowl and I'm going to melt them in the microwave for 2 minutes. That's what works for me. So I'm going to put them in my microwave. always like to clean as I cook. As I've been doing these cooking shows, there have been times where, you know, sometimes I turn off the Zoom and I'm like, oh my God, my kitchen is a mess. So I just threw out the eggs, which is good. This is coming together nicely. I'm gonna add the ½ teaspoon of cream of tartar to my egg mixture. Egg white. I think Debbie said that she didn't have cream of tartar earlier, and so she obviously didn't use it, and it still turned out okay, which is good. Yeah. All right, mine's coming along. It's almost done. My microwave's gonna turn off in 45 seconds, and that's when I think the egg mixture will be done, so it's good timing. Another question I should say that Canner Debbie asked before was, do we use sweetened or unsweetened coconut? So I called it Banjo a couple days ago and she said you use sweetened. So they are very sweet, but I think with the semi-sweet chocolate, it's not too sweet. All right, I think this looks really good. I don't know if anybody else is doing this at home right now. I think Jane might be. And Amy, see how it looks. This is like, you know, it's a solid mixture. So I'm gonna put that back on the stand. And I'm gonna check on my chocolate. Chocolate chips look nice and melted. And I'm just gonna mix them together with a spoon. So it'll be a nice melted chocolate mixture. Again, much easier for me than trying to do it on a stove and burning them or using a double boiler. So the chocolate's ready. And it's it's not super hot, it's warm, which is good. So now what I'm gonna do, I mean, this recipe is really easy. Now that I've added my 4 egg whites, I'm just reviewing for everybody, the pinch of salt, the teaspoon of cream of tartar, and it's a thick paste. I'm gonna add in 1 cup of sugar and mix it on the electric mixer. I have my cup of sugar, mise en place, as they say, in place. So I'm gonna put that in. I'm gonna add the sugar first. I'm just mixing that on low, the sugar. And then I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla.
One quick question. Bobby wants to know, do you have to use cream of tartar if it's already stiff?
You don't have to. You don't. So I'm adding the 2 teaspoons of vanilla. So that's just blending at a low speed and it's just kind of coming all together. I have to say I'm not such a chocolate person, believe it or not. So this is the recipe I just made there is sort of like a good recipe, just that base there for meringues, if you ever want to use that instead, you know, but we're getting to the macaroons. So after you've added that, what we're now going to do is add our chocolate mixture in and again, mix it together in the bowl on a low speed. As Canner Debbie said, somebody just asked do you add the chocolate to the egg whites? So yeah, you do that right now. After you've added the sugar and the vanilla, you add the chocolate.
And what if you have the sweetened coconut, which is what Lori it's in the recipe. I understand it. You just use sweetened coconut. Can you omit the sugar, or I wonder if that would affect it?
I mean, you could try it. I never have done that. If you know, I mean, like I said, I've always added the sweetened coconut and the sugar, and it hasn't been too sweet. But if you want to try it that way,
And if you have the unsweetened coconut, it's not quite as moist, so that might not work so well, because I've
Let us know. Yeah, or maybe try it with a half a cup of sugar,
Right.
maybe. That's the thing about, you know, baking. For me, I know people say baking is a science, but for me, it never has to be that exact. That's how I feel. So my chocolate is blending in and it's looking like a nice chocolate mixture.
Did you add the chocolate to the egg whites? And yes, you added it all in the bowl.
Yeah, so if you haven't yet, add your chocolate to the egg white mixture. This looks really good. Okay, I'm going to show you guys because for the next step, I'm going to do it by hand. Yeah. So here is the lovely chocolate mixture. The only thing that we have to add is the coconut. So this is very easy. You just add this. Mine is the sweetened coconut flakes. It's a bag. I think it's 14 ounces. Yeah, and that's what you add, a 14-ounce bag. So I'm literally dumping this in and I'm gonna mix the rest by hand. I mean, not with a spoon, I should say. You can see, you see the coconut flakes in there and I am just making sure it gets all mixed up. You got to give it a little muscle here.
I have a question. When you mix, if you had it in your mixer stand, you could throw the coconut in and let it get mixed with the.
You most definitely could, and I have done that before.
That's what I did. It was kind of easy.
Easy. So if you want to do that, go for it. I'm kind of a creature of habit, and I always did it this way. But
As long as it gets mixed.
So here is the mixture. My son just walked into the kitchen, by the way, so he's trying to stay off camera. So my mixture looks like this. It looks like it's ready to go.
Lori Dubin had a question. She missed how stiff to whip the egg whites.
You want to mix them so they're stiff enough that when you put a spatula or a spoon in it, the peak will hold. Right? And then just a note on that, after you get that base, after you add the sugar and the vanilla, it'll soften up a little bit, but that's okay. Because then when you add the coconut in, it sort of becomes like this very thick mixture. So there's really one more step before we put it in the oven. Well, sort of two, but I have 2 cookie sheets lined with parchment paper. So line them with parchment paper, or some people have those, like the Silpats, which are the reusable parchment paper. I just use parchment paper today just to make it easy. And I'm going to get, I'm not such a stickler for exact sizes. I'm using, this is like a tablespoon that we eat with. It's not a real measured tablespoon. I'm going to use this. I washed my hands before, so my hands are clean. So if you haven't yet, wash your hands. We're all washing our hands so much these days, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop by this rounded tablespoon onto my cookie sheets. I usually make about, let me see what the recipe says it makes, because that's sort of never what it says. Oh, it doesn't even say, which I love. So I'll probably do 12 per sheet for a total of 24, something like that. It might be more, might be less.
You know what I found, that they don't spread, so you can pack a little bit more on each sheet.
Yes, they do not spread. That's a good point. And I'm going to show you guys the finished products once I put these in the oven. They don't look like a perfect cookie, like they're kind of messy, right? Because they have these coconut flakes hanging out of them, but they taste delicious. So this is what I'm doing, spoonful by spoonful. I see some of you guys, and if you're not baking with us today, like Seraphima said, we're gonna email you or maybe post to the website, I'm not sure what, the actual recipe, so you guys could make it there. I have to say, throughout the years, my Aunt Jo has given these cookies and the recipe to so many people, and so have I. So I know there's so many people who are making these. which makes me really happy. Because I always think you should share your recipes. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have about 12 per tray, which is gonna be perfect. Is everyone, I don't know if Jane's, I think the people at home are at the same step that I'm at. I'm gonna move this one over here. This is what they look like. I mean, it's nothing, you know, that's what they look like on the tray. And I'm gonna do one more tray of it. Yeah, that's a good point, Canner Debbie. They don't spread on the tray the way that, say, like a chocolate chip cookie dough would spread, because they're pretty well formed with the egg whites sticking together. I guess in the same way that a meringue wouldn't spread. So I think I might have exactly 24, which would be good. And I'm always in charge of making the dessert for everything, so I'll definitely be making this for Passover. Go, almost done. I see Amy's at the same stage that I am at home. It's a little sticky on your hands. Okay. For those of you who like to lick the bowl, you can save a little bit to lick the bowl. No, I don't think a little egg white is too bad for you. Since I'm on camera, I won't lick my fingers, but I will be licking the bowl later. So I have my 2 lovely trays of 12 macaroons each, and I'm gonna put them in the oven. So I think I said in the beginning, my oven is at 350 convection. And I think I'm gonna bake them, I can't remember how long I said. Oh, for me, I bake them for about 14 minutes. If you're at 375, that should be fine too. If you're doing regular 350, I don't know, Debbie, how long did you make yours?
They needed a little more time. I had
A little more.
50, so they needed like another 5 minutes. So it would have been closer to 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
350.
Right. If you're at 375 or 350 convection, it should be more like 14 or 15 minutes.
Right, right.
And I'm going to put them in and then I'll tell you about it.
I switched them so that nobody would get too burned, you know, too close to the, like half.
Yeah.
I switched, I flipped the trays. But it's really very easy. Wonderful.
And this is Aunt Jo. If you see this
Aunt Jo.
highlighted, is the author of this recipe.
Yes. She's under Richard Hockman. That's her code name. That's her husband's name. Yeah.
Right.
So they're in the oven. They'll bake for 14 minutes. The way that you can tell they're done is if they sort of look like a real cookie as opposed to the batter. You don't want any burnt coconut flakes or anything like that. They're a little bit crispy on the outside, but they're very chewy on the inside. And I will show you here, like the magic of a baking show. I have a finished plate of them right here. So here's what it looks like afterwards. These freeze really well. So if you're baking today just for fun, that's great. But if you want to use them for Seder, definitely, I just throw them in Ziploc baggies and put them in the freezer. And I have to say, I'll eat them right out of the freezer. They almost taste like candy when they're nice and frozen. And they defrost really quickly too. So, yeah, I'm wondering if anybody has any specific questions about, I think we're all caught up on that stuff. Amy, are you still scooping away? Yeah.
Or Cantor Debbie, do you want to moderate?
Sure. There are no more questions that I can see. So
I think we handled the questions as we went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to maybe tell us about your Seder menu? Maybe you have some fantastic ideas that we don't know about.
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, like I said, I'm the baker. So I'm not big on the main part of the meal. I'm better with the desserts. So for Seder, I will definitely make macaroons and meringues and things like that. the other, other people in my family are better at other things like matzo ball soup. I happen to really like gefilte fish, even though nobody else in my family does. And I have a good recipe for brisket that I have many different recipes for brisket.
What's your brisket recipe, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, I have many, but my favorite is from my friend Nancy, which I think is like her mother-in-law's. And it's you have the brisket, and the sauce is basically 3 cups. It's so easy. 3 cups of ketchup mixed with 3 cups of water and 3 packets of Lipton soup mix, onion soup mix.
That's it?
Mix it all together, pour it all over the top. And then I also like to add in some cut up carrots and mushrooms and potatoes. And I can't remember how long you bake it for, but it's a long time.
Do you bake it a long time on low, or do you do it
low? Yeah.
low for a long time?
Yeah.
Then you refrigerate it and then slice it, because sometimes I do it and then it falls apart. And so
I like to refrigerate it and slice it. So that's the brisket. Like I said, I'm embarrassed to tell you, I've never made matzo balls. I usually pick them up or somebody else makes them. My mother-in-law has a good recipe for a kosher for Passover noodle pudding, which is really good. I love to make a rosette. It's another family story. My husband's allergic to walnuts, pecans, and cashews, so tree nuts. But everybody in my family always gets confused as to what he's allergic to, even though he's been in the family for over 20 years. So sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. So over the years, so we make it with peanuts, or almonds, which I guess is kind of weird to make it with peanuts because a lot of people have peanut allergies, but we don't. So that's how we do it. Sometimes you can make it without any nuts, but I love her rosette. And my mother actually used to always say how much she loved her rosette and that she thought we should make it all the time throughout the year because it's so delicious, but we never did. We only make it a Passover.
You have any funny Passover stories? I'll just think about it. I'm going to tell you one funny one of mine. I keep kosher. So I had these 2 kosher briskets and I'm getting ready for the Seder. And my favorite recipe is, but I might try yours, is a can of cranberry sauce and a can of beer. So I'm getting ready for the Seder and I'm making it ahead of time. And as I'm pouring the beer over the, $100 worth of kosher brisket, I'm saying to myself, oh my God, what an idiot. Now I can't serve it for Passover because beer is a grain. And I just, just blew it.
That was that.
The week after, but that's not why I bought massive amounts of kosher brisket for Passover. So I learned my lesson. I should try your recipe for Passover.
Yeah, I do have a recipe with beer. I've never made it. It's my friend Liza's mom. I think it's like her grandmother's. Our favorite Passover story is obviously the wrong macaroon one.
That's a great story.
Another good one, which I don't, was when my son was a baby and I think he was like a year old. It was the first Passover we went to with my in-laws in New York, and it was a big deal. We made the big trip, and my mother-in-law put out this humongous spread and beautiful dining room tablecloth and all the dishes, and we sat down, and my baby, who had been a little fussy all day, proceeded to spit up over the entire table. And nobody knew what to do, and we had to redo everything. So we always retell that story. I laughed because I just thought, what are you gonna do?
What else can you do? Right.
Yeah. So no, but I love Passover, and you don't have to go to synagogue. You do it all at home, which is one of the few holidays.
Right. Okay, here we go. Couple questions here. How will we get the recipe with the instructions? I think it's going to be emailed to everybody who's registered on this.
Yeah. I'll email to you, Seraphima, and you can pass it along.
We'll put it
Yeah,
on
I do
Facebook.
have it.
We'll put
You
it on
do
Shir
have it.
Shalom.
For everyone who gets the emails from Congregation Shir Shalom, on the last email that was sent, there's the flyer. I also sent it in the chat. I can send it again.
Oh, maybe in the chat so everyone here.
Yeah, but we don't
But
have.
you know what, Julie, in the flyer, what we did on purpose was we listed the ingredients list, but we didn't explain the instructions because we figured we'd wait till now. So let me send you something new first.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah, thanks, Julie.
And here's a question. If you want to make macaroons without the chocolate, do you just skip the chocolate? I guess you can just make them with coconut and egg white.
You could, yeah. But my mother-in-law has made different versions of them. Like I think she did them once with butterscotch instead of chocolate, like a different
Yeah.
flavor,
I've got,
right?
like grated lemon and sliced almonds in the
Yeah.
exact same
And
thing.
also similar to how people do chocolate covered matzah and add a bunch of stuff. And I don't know what specific candies are kosher for Passover, depending on how you eat, but
Right.
a lot of people add like mini M&Ms, mini little other kind of treats, or kosher for Passover candies.
And Bob says there's a matzo ball recipe on Shir Shalom Friends. But I
Okay,
just read an
maybe I'll try that.
Well, the easiest thing is the box, and there was a
I
whole
know.
article about truly
Yeah.
the matzo ball box. It's just always great. I've been using it forever.
My grandmother made great matzo balls. Those were my favorite.
I just shared the instructions if you want to copy while we talk the instruction.
Oh yeah, okay.
Thank you.
But we will do it.
Yeah,
but
with like the specific ingredients. And
no,
stuff.
I never use the box for matzo ball soup. I make it myself. But
Mhm.
the matzo ball that my mother used to do and her mother, back in Stetter, they fried it in probably goose fat, but of course I don't do it, but I fry before I put it in the broth.
Ooh,
I just fry it in the oil, and it's
wow.
very,
Oh boy, I bet that's
yeah, it holds very well
huh.
before I put in the broth.
I have to say, I love the stories behind the recipes. And as Keanu or Debbie said in the beginning, I'm a writer and I've written a bunch of books, and I'm working on an idea since I'm doing so many baking shows about a book about baked goods and all the recipes and the stories behind them, because I think the stories behind them are so much fun.
Yeah.
Bobby said she also fries, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, my cookies actually only have 5 more minutes, so that's good. They'll be done soon. And I'm so excited that I'm going to have all of these macaroons in my house. I'll definitely have to deliver them to people's houses because it's
Right. You
Wow.
can't leave them. It's dangerous.
yeah.
Rachel, maybe you mentioned what you do, like the fundraising for the nursing home with this mug. Maybe you mentioned to us, other
yeah.
people who didn't hear this yet.
Oh, well, okay, a couple of things related to that. This cookbook, which is actually a wonderful idea, it's called Stories of the Family Table, Recipes Passed Down. This is where Edney's recipe was actually published in, and this was a book put together by many volunteers for Greenwood House, which is a Jewish nursing home near where I live. It's in New Jersey. I live in Pennsylvania. And this was a fundraiser, but I started to tell Canner and Seraphim in the beginning, we were talking about Zoom events, and there's an event in person that takes place every May, the Thursday before Mother's Day, named in memory of my mom, called the Becky Levy Card Party and Luncheon. And we've been doing it for like 17 years, I think. And we couldn't do it last year because of COVID. And we're still not doing it this year because of COVID, because it's like 250 people all together, women inside. And we talked about maybe this year doing a Zoom event, but and so the event is that people come and they have lunch and they play mahjong or bridge or canasta. And also a lot of volunteers bake desserts. Like the food is catered by the place where we have it, but the desserts are everybody's favorite part because they're homemade by everybody. And so anyway, this year we decided that we're calling it a non-event event. And we're telling people that we look forward to not seeing you on May 6th. And everybody should stay home. We're going to send them a special video. And when people make donations, we're going to send them treats in the mail for donating, because we thought, obviously, we want to raise money for a nursing home, which it's been a really tough year for nursing homes. But it was just, I think it's kind of a cute idea. And we're so looking forward to having the event in person in May in 2022. So that's the story about that. That's just kind of like development work and how everybody's making it through. But I like this idea of the non-event event. So that's the story there.
Great. How are your macaroons doing?
My macaroons are good. They have 3 minutes left. I'm going to check on them. Oh, I think they're going to be really good. And they smell really good. For those of you baking them at home, I'm sure that your kitchens smell really good.
How many people are actually baking now? Do you want to raise your hand if you are? Or
I see Lori, Jane, Amy, Robbie. Yeah.
Yum. So your house has got to smell good.
Yeah. I was telling them before, today's my husband's birthday. And so yesterday I made him a cake that we're going to eat tonight. It's like a triple chocolate layer Magnolia bakery recipe. So I've been baking a lot this weekend. But I'm excited for that cake too. And we have to eat it all up before Passover, obviously.
We've got a little time.
Yes, for sure. I know we thought this was a good time to do it. Passover is in less than 2 weeks. And, you know, you could make these in advance, like I said, and freeze them, or it's sort of hard to not eat them out of the freezer. I put them in my basement freezer, so I'll forget that they're there.
Oh, the good question from Lori. What are you making with the egg yolks?
Oh, you know what? I'm not making anything with the egg yolks. I got rid of them. Sorry. I guess you could, but you know, the egg whites are the healthier part. So I'm just not using them.
Oh,
Oh, good for challah. That's true. Yeah. I have to say, as a little plug for challah, I never made challah until this past year either. And a friend of mine who's also an author named Beth Riccanati, you guys should check out her website. She's a doctor in LA. And over the last 15 years, she started making challah every Friday afternoon. And she found it to be like a very soothing, it sort of was like a mind body thing for her. And now she teaches challah classes every Friday. And she wrote a book about it called Braided. And I'm having her on my baking show a Friday in September. It's not for a while, but a lot of people have been baking challah more so during the pandemic. And the first time I made a challah with her, my family thought it looked and tasted like a soft pretzel, which it did. So it's hard to make, but I've worked hard on it. And it's really fun to make challah from scratch, I think.
It is. I have a very easy recipe that I use with the bread man. And you just throw in the wet ingredients, you throw in the dry ingredients, throw the yeast on top, hit dough, an hour and 30 minutes, it's risen, it's perfect. You take it out, you separate it, you braid it, you let it rise, you brush it on it, you throw it in the oven. It's
I have to say, these cookies look perfectly done.
Oh, beautiful.
And I can tell that they're perfectly done. Remember I said about the burning? You obviously don't want them to burn, but I can see a flake of coconut here or two that looks like it's about to burn. So you know that they're crispy on the outside, but they'll still be chewy on the inside. So I'm gonna grab the other one. Here they are here. And you just let them cool, obviously until they're cool. And then I'm gonna put them right in my Ziploc baggies for my freezer, but I might keep a couple for my family to eat right
Rachel,
now.
there's a question. How do we subscribe to your cooking show?
That is a good question. Okay. First of all, if you go to my website, rachellevylesser.com, this is the infomercial part. You can sign up for my newsletter, and I email about twice a month with updates on the cooking show. The cooking show is usually the last Saturday of every month at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And the way to find it really is to go to a Mighty Blaze website. It's called A Mighty Blaze, which is an organization that I started working with this year that just started about a year ago. There was actually an article just written up about them in Publishers Weekly. It was started by a group of New York Times bestselling authors who were watching all of their friends' book tours being canceled last March because of COVID. And they got together, a group of volunteers, and now there's 30 people working there, including me. And we run weekly and monthly shows online where I interview cookbook authors and bake with them, but the co-founder of A Mighty Blaze, Jenna Blum, on Friday just interviewed Kristen Hanna about the 4 Winds. I mean, we've got some big names that we've interviewed. Anna Quinlan, George Saunders is coming up. I'm trying to think of all the names now. There's been so many. Cheryl Strayed. So there's all different kinds of authors being interviewed, but I lead the cookbook authors, which has been really fun for me. And it's interactive because we get to bake together. So just go to amightyblaze.com. You can check that out.
It's wonderful.
It's been really fun for me to bake. Like I baked with the woman who started Magnolia Bakery, and you know, she made it really fun for all of us. It was nice. We made marshmallow Oreo brownies. That was fun.
I put in the chat the link to.
Thank you. Yeah, but if
I
you
will put
subscribe to my newsletter too, I'll keep you updated on everything.
Yeah, we put all the information on Facebook, Bobby. I can send it to you and you.
Yeah.
Bobby is our Facebook guru. She's
Some adorable little girl is waving with a bunny.
Bunny,
Cutest thing I've
Lila.
ever seen. Yeah.
So cute. That's Lila, and Seraphima has knit her entire wardrobe.
Oh,
since-
that's Seraphima's granddaughter. She's adorable. I will say for A Mighty Blaze, the next baking show I'm doing is, it's not the last Saturday of the month because the last Saturday of this month is Passover. So we're doing it on Saturday, March 20th at 2 p.m. and we're making pie with a woman who has written several books. And her latest book is called Miss American Pie, which I love that title. And she has a TED Talk about the healing power of pie. And she has an amazing story to tell about losing her husband young and how pie saved her. So it's really interesting. We talk about more than just the thing that we bake, which I love.
That's awesome.
And I had never made a homemade pie crust until a couple weeks ago. And I followed her recipe and it was very easy to do. And now I love making pie. Yeah.
Awesome.
But there's a lot of sweets going on in my house.
You're lucky
like-
you have good genes.
Yeah, we do have not good genes, but you know, gotta,
We have to thank James Levy for that.
yes, my dad, tall and thin, but I do eat healthy. I just eat a lot of sweets and I do yoga in the Peloton.
Sounds like a good deal.
So,
Good.
and yeah, today is pie day. That's true.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Rachel,
Oh.
you've been absolutely wonderful. If there's no more questions, we can let you get back to your husband's birthday.
Yeah.
And,
Hey,
what is the name of the pie?
oh, the pie book, the name of the pie is called Miss American Pie. And you could follow this woman, Beth Howard, at her website, her blog, which is called The World Needs More Pie. Which I love that name too. I've met some real, you know who we're having on in April is, I'm really excited about this, Joanne Chang, who's the owner and founder of Flour Bakery, Flour Bakery in Boston. And she's written some fabulous cookbooks. Yeah, we're having on some really cool people and they're also generous with their time. So it's been great.
That's wonderful. Well, now that you're kind of a friend of Shir Shalom Friends, maybe you can, if you don't mind adding us to your, when you start doing publicity and blasts and stuff, you know, feel free to add your stuff to us because we feel like you're our new friend and we want to keep up with you.
I feel like you're my new friend too. By the way, and I'm also going to give you the information for Beth, the challah baker, because she does a lot of synagogue stuff and I think you guys would love her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. If
right.
everybody give a
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
pause.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Thanks.
Seraphima. Thank you, everybody. And